We have traded the warmth of the human hand for the cold light of a screen, and our nervous systems are currently breaking down because of it. This is not hyperbole. It is a biological terror being enacted in slow motion across the developed world. We have convinced ourselves that safety, privacy, and digitized connection are superior, but in doing so, we have culturally amputated the single most fundamental requirement for human psychological stability: tactile contact. The epidemic of modern anxiety, the pervasive low-grade depression that blankets entire generations, is not primarily a crisis of meaning, but a crisis of contact. It is skin hunger, and it is starving us from the inside out. The skin is the largest organ, a vast, sensitive antenna that registers reality with a precision. Our eyes and ears can only dream of matching, yet we treat it like a passive covering. We have forgotten the profound, non-negotiable truth revealed by every single piece of psychological research. Touch is not a luxury. It is the infrastructure upon which consciousness is built. Without it, the house collapses. Harry Harlow proved this ruthlessly with his orphaned monkeys, who overwhelmingly chose the cloth mother offering comfort over the wire mother offering sustenance. The lesson was brutal. Survival itself is secondary to the need for softness. Humans, like those infant primates, are wired to decay without the consistent, normalizing pressure of another being. When we are denied this fundamental input, our brain doesn't just feel lonely. It registers an ongoing state of emergency, flooding the system with cortisol, driving us into a chronic fight or flight response. We are a generation trapped in perpetual high alert, and we look for existential solutions to what is fundamentally a physiological starvation. We pathologize this necessity, mistaking the biological mandate for mental illness. We medicate the anxiety that is merely the sound of a nervous system screaming for the oxytocin hit that only safe, sustained touch can provide. Look around. We meticulously construct environments designed to minimize incidental contact. Private cars, separated cubicles, vast personal spaces. And then wonder why our baseline state is paranoia and irritability. Society has imposed a cultural quarantine on the human body, turning the simple act of a comforting hand on the shoulder into a liability or a transgression. We have sanitized intimacy out of existence, replacing genuine connection with digital performance. Forgetting that 1,000 likes on social media do not, and can never, equate to the simple stabilizing pressure of 2 kilograms of human weight resting on your back. If you felt this cold detachment but couldn't name the cause, or if you are tired of shallow self-help answers that never address the deep, physical roots of our modern malaise, then consider subscribing. We dive past the headlines here, seeking the structure beneath the surface. The tragedy deepens when you realize how early this starvation begins. The fetus in the womb spends 9 months in constant, total tactile saturation, a profound compression and rocking that lays the foundation for all future emotional regulation. Birth is the first traumatic shock, and the recovery relies entirely on immediate, massive skin-to-skin contact. If that is interrupted, if the infant is left isolated to scream itself silent, the first lesson learned is one of cold chaos. The child internalizes the understanding that the universe is unresponsive, hostile, and non-nurturing. This foundational failure of touch becomes the blueprint for adult relationships, manifesting as hypervigilance, inability to trust, or profound dissociative numbness. The adult who cannot tolerate vulnerability, the partner who pushes love away just as it gets close, the friend who always seems slightly removed. They are often merely echoing the deep, cold silence they experienced when their infant nervous system required a calibration that never arrived. The hunger doesn't vanish. It simply mutates into darker, more complex forms. It manifests as addiction, as aggression, or as the desperate, fleeting attempt to find intense contact through destructive means. Anything to momentarily fill the void left by decades of tactile deprivation. This societal aversion to simple, non-sexual touch is not a sign of progress or sophistication. It is a profound philosophical error, mistaking cleanliness for health and distance for autonomy. We are functionally allergic to the very medicine that could heal us. The true agony of this starvation lies in the perpetual misfiring of the nervous system. The skin is not merely a boundary, it is the largest organ, a massive sensor array designed by evolution to confirm environmental safety. When this array receives no stabilizing data, no deep pressure, no sustained warmth, no regular non-eroticized holding, the entire mammalian system defaults to threat mode. This is the core function of the vagus nerve, our great internal regulator. Touch, specifically the deep, slow compression of a hug or the simple weight of another body, is a direct nonverbal command to the vagus nerve to stand down. It signals the brainstem that we are not alone on the savanna, exposed to predators. The modern crisis is that we are chronically flooding the system with high-level stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, which were meant for short-term escape, simply because we lack the physical confirmation that we are safe enough to rest. We live in a perpetual state of low-grade sympathetic activation, twitchy, anxious, and eternally prepared for a fight that never materializes, but which we cannot afford to lose. This chronic vigilance is exhausting, and it is the physical mechanism underpinning the generalized anxiety disorder that now blankets the industrialized world. We try to compensate for this profound physiological deficit by chasing synthetic, high-intensity sensory inputs. The endless scroll, the deafening volume in the headphones, the bass vibrating through the floor of the gym or the club, the constant dopamine hit of notifications. These are all desperate attempts to feel something real, a weak substitute for the profound, slow grounding that only physical gravity and steady human contact can provide. We are swapping the deep, slow bass note of fundamental safety for the screeching, erratic static of manufactured intensity, and mistaking the resulting exhaustion for fulfillment. This is why therapy often fails to stick. You cannot cognitively argue a nervous system out of a physical state of terror that was programmed in infancy. No amount of positive affirmation can override the primordial panic registered by a touch-starved vagus nerve. The deepest, most stubborn psychological scars are not encoded in language. They are encoded in tissue, and they require a physical counterforce to be rewritten. Understanding the true depth of this physiological trap requires dismantling popular, shallow assumptions about mental health. If you appreciate the commitment to analyzing these uncomfortable, subterranean truths about the human condition, consider subscribing right now. Supporting this work allows us to continue rejecting the easy answers and digging into the mechanical reality of suffering. The subsequent philosophical tragedy is how we have pathologized the need itself. Because society has deemed non-sexual intimacy dangerous or weak, the individual who genuinely craves a hug or a moment of simple physical proximity is forced to interpret that craving as a sign of deficiency, dependency, or moral failure. The natural stabilizing instinct is reframed as a humiliating secret. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. The deprivation leads to an internal chaos that makes the individual genuinely less competent at navigating relationships, confirming their original fear that they are indeed broken. They develop brilliant, brittle intellectual defenses to justify their isolation. An overdeveloped philosophical rationale for radical autonomy, claiming independence when what they are truly executing is avoidance. They demand space because they never learned how to safely share it. They become experts in self-sufficiency, capable of surviving entirely alone, but this capability is not a strength. It is a scar. It is the elaborate psychological armor built over a nervous system that learned very early on that the only reliable source of pressure and stability is internal, because external sources will always disappear, neglect, or harm. This hyper-individualism, this pathological demand for distance, is merely the adult expression of the traumatized infant's desperate conclusion. Trust nothing that you cannot control, and you cannot control the touch of another person. Therefore, eliminate the need for it entirely. It is a logic built not on freedom, but on profound fear. This tragic architectural flaw defines modern transactional relationships. We no longer seek partners, we seek co-conspirators in the project of mutual avoidance. Individuals who will witness our performance of capability without ever demanding the messy, unscripted reality of shared vulnerability. The highly successful, emotionally armored individual, the archetype of modern societal praise, is often the most profoundly bankrupt in this domain. Consider the Silicon Valley titan, the driven executive, or the influencer whose life is a study in rigid, self-imposed optimization. They have mastered every quantifiable metric: wealth, health, professional dominance, even the aesthetic curation of their personal brand. Their lives are fortresses of control. They enter relationships not seeking shared vulnerability, but rather a polished mirror to reflect their curated image of success. They date people who fit the profile, who enhance the narrative of their life as an unassailable, independent entity. The partner is less a lover and more a high-status accessory, a final, expensive piece of furniture to complete the meticulously sterile apartment of the self. But the moment this relationship threatens to cross the critical threshold, the moment the partner demands genuine, unstructured presence, the moment they require comfort during an unresolvable crisis, the moment they simply need the quiet, unearned stability of a hand held without agenda or condition, the entire defensive structure collapses. The armored individual does not know how to give this unquantifiable sustenance, and more terrifyingly, they do not know how to receive it without feeling humiliatingly dependent. They confuse vulnerability with losing leverage. The relationship is immediately terminated, often through a brutal clinical extraction, a text message, or a sudden, emotionally sterile declaration that they need to focus on their goals. This is not a man or woman prioritizing their career. This is a nervous system defaulting to the only safe state it knows: absolute surgical isolation. They are not independent. They are merely incapable of integrating another nervous system into their protective circuit. They destroy intimacy not out of malice, but because the biological signature of true closeness registers in their system as the threat of catastrophic abandonment, an ancient alarm bell triggered by the loss of soul control. This pattern of intimate sabotage is not only tolerated in contemporary culture, it is often lauded. We call this knowing your worth or maintaining high standards. We praise the person who ruthlessly cuts off emotional ties that interfere with their optimized trajectory, mistaking the fear of merging for the strength of purpose. This societal delusion that the most successful individuals are those who require the least amount of human input is systematically destroying the very fabric of available emotional infrastructure. It teaches young people that competence is measured by the ability to withstand loneliness, rather than the courage to mitigate it through connection. We have elevated the avoidant attachment style to a moral ideal, mistaking the lack of felt need for self-mastery. We have created a generation capable of building spacecraft, but incapable of holding space for a grieving partner. The cost of this emotional efficiency is the atrophy of the soul. If these raw, difficult observations resonate with the subterranean currents running beneath your own life, and if you believe that confronting these truths is essential for psychological liberation, please take a moment to subscribe right now. It is the only metric that guarantees we can continue to create documentaries that map the true, non-obvious architecture of the human spirit, rejecting the shallow, saccharine self-help platitudes that currently dominate the conversation. The eventual tax exacted for this radical self-sufficiency is crushing. A profound, cold spiritual emptiness that cannot be filled by achievement. The individual has won the game of optimization but lost the capacity for meaning. They sit atop their mountain of success, gazing down at a world they conquered, only to realize the landscape is entirely made of glass. Brilliant, reflective, and utterly non-porous, they achieve the objective of eliminating dependency, but in doing so, they eliminated the possibility of shared reality. They are perfectly preserved specimens, incapable of warmth or decay, eternally locked behind the armor they mistook for a vessel. The tragedy is that the only thing that could alleviate the pain of isolation, unearned, simple, physical closeness, is the one thing their highly conditioned trauma response absolutely forbids them from seeking or accepting. They are functionally allergic to the cure. This physiological paradox dictates a lifetime spent chasing substitutes, high-intensity risk, obsessive work, synthetic emotional dramas, Anything that provides a sharp enough physiological spike to momentarily obscure the constant, low-frequency hum of relational starvation. They seek noise because silence holds the truth of their profound lack. They become philosophers of the void, but only because they fear the fullness of being touched. To break this cycle requires more than intellectual realization. It requires the terrifying, deliberate decision to discard the armor and endure the initial shock of vulnerability, understanding that the only reliable antidote to the psychological isolation of modern life is the risky, profoundly necessary act of allowing another person to gently apply pressure to the wound you have spent a lifetime keeping sterile. That is the true challenge of the contemporary psyche. To join the community dedicated to exploring these uncomfortable vital truths, hit the subscribe button now. We must now pivot from the individual symptom to the systemic sickness that fuels it, because the most pervasive lie currently marketed to the traumatized psyche is the lie of the optimized life. This is the toxic religion of Silicon Valley and the self-help industrial complex, which promises that if you simply eliminate enough friction, automate enough tasks, and maximize your output, you will finally achieve not merely success, but spiritual peace. This is profoundly dishonest. It treats the human soul not as a mystery to be explored, but as a faulty operational system to be debugged, replacing the agonizing labor of existential inquiry with the clean, quantifiable metrics of logistics. The optimized life is merely the most efficient route to an empty room. The anxiety doesn't dissipate. It simply gets better organized, neatly filed under a bullet point labeled Future Concerns. We have pathologized rest and spiritual downtime because silence reveals the architecture of our profound loneliness. Productivity, in this context, is not a means of creation. It is a sophisticated, high-speed avoidance mechanism designed to keep the self too busy, too preoccupied with micro-achievements, to ever ask the singular defining question: what exactly am I building this perfect structure for? We have outsourced our own meaning-making to external algorithms and corporate key performance indicators. The optimized man is productive, successful, and secretly terrified he has missed the point entirely. His life looks like a flawlessly crafted spreadsheet, but feels like a vast, cold expanse. This is why when we observe the psychological landscape of the contemporary elite, we do not find titans of serene contentment. We find highly functional, exquisitely tailored anxiety machines. They have mastered the metrics of the system, but the system itself is structurally deficient in delivering human fulfillment. It's an immaculate engine running on dry air, generating phenomenal heat but zero forward motion toward anything truly meaningful. This is the intellectual poison we must aggressively reject. The notion that self-sufficiency is a destination rather than a temporary survival tool. If this rigorous, uncompromising pursuit of the truth, which refuses to soften the analysis for comfort or clicks, resonates with your need for genuine depth, then I urge you to take a moment and subscribe. It is the only way to support the continued creation of deep content that dissects these modern myths, rather than merely celebrating them. The optimized individual is trapped in an infinitely replicating loop, condemned to the Sisyphean task of perfecting a self that is only defined by its capacity to perform. Mistaking complexity for depth and efficiency for vitality, they remain allergic to the simple, profound messiness of existence because that messiness implies a lack of control, and lack of control is the original trauma they sought to overcome through achievement. Their achievement then becomes an elaborate monument to their refusal to heal. The true danger is not burnout, which is temporary exhaustion, but burn-in. The permanent etching of that performance imperative onto the identity itself, creating a personality so rigid, so defined by its successful navigation of external demands, that it cannot bend toward the internal whisper of genuine desire. This process replaces the soul with a flawlessly executed avatar, capable of winning every material war but incapable of experiencing anything resembling peace. Incapable of experiencing anything resembling peace. The suffering that attends the optimized life is not an unfortunate side effect. It is the engine itself. We suffer from this particular malaise because, unconsciously, the pursuit of optimization is a desperate adult reenactment of childhood negotiation. It is the adult ego attempting to solve the foundational trauma of conditional love. The system acts as the perfect surrogate for the demanding, narcissistic, or emotionally absent parent who only gave approval when performance was flawless. We are not aiming for success, we are aiming for the unassailable fortress of perfection, where we believe finally the judgment stops and the love begins. But the system, like the dysfunctional parent it models, is structurally incapable of delivering unconditional affirmation. It is designed only to demand more, ensuring that the finish line is perpetually receding. The optimized individual is therefore trapped in a psychological operation where their entire sense of worth is outsourced to an unforgiving metric. This mechanism gives rise to the tyranny of the internal accountant, a relentless calculating function of the psyche that monetizes every moment of existence, converting leisure into debt and spontaneity into inefficiency. This accountant patrols the inner landscape, ensuring no moment is wasted on non-productive subjective experience. No sadness allowed that doesn't yield a therapeutic insight. No joy permitted that isn't immediately shared for validation. This pathological fear of internal silence is the reason we obsessively fill our days. Stillness reveals the rot at the core of the optimized identity, the profound aching emptiness that was supposed to have been filled by the latest achievement or the perfected routine. We confuse frantic activity with genuine purpose, clinging to the manufactured meaning of maximum efficiency, precisely because we are terrified to face the truly terrifying question of existential meaninglessness without a predefined spreadsheet. If you find yourself nodding, if this analysis cuts through the celebratory noise of hustle culture and offers a genuine explanation for the structural anxiety of modern life, then I have to ask you again to subscribe. Supporting this channel is supporting the necessary, often unpopular work of building a genuine resistance to the superficiality that governs our age, allowing us to delve deeper into the mechanics of suffering. The deeper truth is that the optimized self is not merely busy. It is strategically avoiding the necessary suffering that precedes genuine change. The path to real vitality requires the tolerance of incompleteness, the acceptance of the ugly drafts and the moments of profound failure that the perfected avatar is designed to erase. The optimization strategy fundamentally rejects the tragic dimension of human existence, trading the possibility of profound joy for the guaranteed mediocrity of constant, measurable contentment. They trade depth for data, and in doing so, they willingly choose emotional famine over the risk of a messy, uncontrollable feast. The greatest illusion perpetuated by this optimization myth is that control equals safety. The optimized individual believes that if they can just arrange their external world impeccably enough, they will finally be immune to the vicissitudes of human vulnerability. But vulnerability is not a flaw to be patched. It is the precondition for connection. By building this fortress of self-sufficiency, they achieve a sterile form of safety, but they simultaneously guarantee a perfect isolation. They have won the battle against external critique, only to lose the war for internal belonging. The ultimate tragedy of the optimized life is the realization that the self they worked so hard to sculpt and perfect is entirely interchangeable, defined not by unique essence but by universally valued performance criteria. This realization hits like a wave of cold dread. They are not unique masters of their destiny, but exquisitely refined tools of the system they sought to transcend. The final escape is not another upgrade or another goal conquered, but the radical and terrifying refusal to define the self by the external mirror. It is the decision to allow the messy, inefficient, non-optimized self to finally exist, unedited, unmeasured, and unapologetically alive. If this is the kind of conversation you need to fuel your own intellectual resistance, then join us. Hit that subscribe button and become part of the community that chooses profound, challenging reality over comfortable, optimized illusion. This is the ultimate necessary betrayal, the rejection of the life you were taught to desire. The final, terrifying freedom is the realization that the optimization regime, the austerity of the soul demanded by the algorithm, is nothing more than a highly efficient mechanism for social control, designed to filter out anyone who possesses an unquantifiable, unmanageable depth. If you cannot be tracked, measured, and improved, you are a bug in the system, and that is precisely where your humanity resides. They promise you mastery, but they deliver servitude to a spreadsheet. They promise you peace, but they enforce a constant, low-grade anxiety about missing your potential. You were told to refine your gold, but you ended up only polishing your chains. The core philosophical mistake of the optimized life is the belief that meaning is something to be achieved through relentless effort, rather than something that arrives uninvited, often through error, disaster, and profound, inefficient suffering. The pursuit of perfect alignment simply pushes the truly essential questions, the questions of purpose, legacy, and love, further and further into the future, always pending the next upgrade. But the future never arrives. There is only the perpetually optimized present, a sterile holding pattern that drains the color from existence. The verdict, then, is devastatingly simple. The optimized life is not a better life, it is a smaller life. It is the voluntary reduction of your own vast, chaotic, contradictory self into a manageable, marketable profile. The act of choosing inefficiency, of embracing the unpredictable friction of your true character, of allowing yourself the radical luxury of being profoundly, unproductively messy, is the only genuine act of intellectual and existential resistance left. You must stop trying to be the best version of yourself, because that version is simply the one most easily assimilated by the machine. Instead, choose the terrifying, irreducible original. Choose the self that cannot be indexed, cannot be standardized, and cannot, under any condition, be optimized. That is the only way to avoid the tragedy of becoming a solution, looking for a problem that was never yours to solve. That is the moment you finally stop living according to the metrics of others and reclaim the magnificent, complicated burden of your own unique soul. If this confrontation with the difficult truth resonates deep enough to shake you out of the easy comfort of the lie, then join us. Subscribe now. Become part of the community that chooses profound, challenging reality over comfortable, optimized illusion, and let us continue this necessary, messy, and deeply inefficient journey together. The final verdict on the optimized life, the quantified life, is that it is a system of profound spiritual entropy. It is the ultimate intellectual tyranny, dressed up in the friendly language of self-improvement. It promises you resilience, but only delivers brittleness. It promises you freedom, but only provides a smaller orbit. You have spent years calibrating the perfect vehicle for a journey you were too terrified to take. The profound mistake lies in demanding certainty from a universe that operates entirely on probability and glorious accident. The optimized self is a philosophical dead end, designed to prevent the one thing essential for true growth: the catastrophic, defining failure that forces total reinvention. So, discard the dashboard. Throw away the metrics. Recognize that the highest state of being is not alignment, but potent instability. Stop seeking the solution because the seeking itself is the distraction. The purpose of your existence is not to streamline your output. The purpose is simply to confront the raw, untamed reality of the human condition and to feel it, deeply and without adjustment. Do not confuse maximum efficiency with maximum living. The only true genius lies in the refusal to be minimized. If you choose that refusal, if you choose the terrifying, irreducible original over the sanitized profile, then you are choosing the magnificent burden of genuine selfhood. If this commitment to the difficult, unvarnished truth is where you belong, then ensure you are subscribed. Join this community of thinkers who understand that the real work is always inefficient, always messy, and always worth the glorious trouble. We must continue to explore the questions that cannot be optimized, and we will do so together. The final devastating realization is this: optimization is merely the institutionalization of mediocrity. It is the sophisticated way we train ourselves to aim lower, to mistake control for meaning. Your life is not a spreadsheet to be balanced. It is a primal scream that demands to be heard. The only real success is surviving the collision with reality without sanitizing the impact. We must reject the quiet lie that convenience equals quality, Let the jagged edges of your character remain. Let your narrative contain contradictions and glorious mistakes. The most precious things in life, love, insight, genuine creation, are inherently wasteful, inefficient, and irreducible. They are the things that defy the algorithm, and they are the only things that truly matter. The moment you define your life in terms of return on investment, you have already lost the investment. If this necessary rejection of the minimized life resonates deep within you, if you feel the weight of this magnificent refusal, then make sure you are subscribed. Join the only community dedicated to dissecting the great illusions of our age, where we value the terrifying, unmeasurable question far above the optimized answer. Don't miss what's next. Don't miss what's next. The final devastating verdict is this: we were never meant to be efficient, we were meant to be magnificent. The lie of optimization is that it promises you more time, when in fact, it steals the quality of the time you have left by demanding you fill it with measurable, predictable output. Your highest destiny is not productivity, it is presence. Stop trying to build a perfectly streamlined engine and allow yourself to become the beautiful, sprawling ruin that is the authentic self. Let the world run its cruel, neat calculations on everything else. Your purpose is the expensive, illogical thing that defies their metrics. The love that takes too long, the art that makes no money, the insight that destroys your prior beliefs. Embrace the inefficiency. Embrace the glorious waste. That is the necessary price of genuine selfhood. If you recognize that the greatest tragedy is a life lived by the rule book of return on investment, then subscribe now. Join this community of necessary failures, the only place where we celebrate the terrifying, unmeasurable questions that make us fully, magnificently human. We reject the quiet minimization. We are the ones who refuse to be optimized. The final verdict is not subtle. The life defined by efficiency is a life already lost. It is a slow, quiet suicide of the soul, where you trade the impossible architecture of your genuine self for a manageable two-dimensional spreadsheet. Never mistake ease for fulfillment or standardization for sanity. Your greatest contribution to existence will be the things you did that made absolutely no sense to the analyst. The profound connections, the irrational sacrifices, the deep, illogical loves. Let them categorize the commodities. You are the masterpiece that cannot be priced. And this is my final defiant challenge to you. Stop attempting to perfect the metrics of your short time here and instead invest every single resource into making your remaining days radically, unmeasurably alive. If you are tired of the constant pressure to shrink yourself down into a profitable unit, if you feel the deep, magnificent pull toward the unoptimized, then subscribe now. Join this necessary rebellion. We are the ones who refuse to be silent.